Yep, there you go. Thank you so much. So production, isn't it? Dang. I'm so glad to be here, y'all. This morning's message is there's a new world coming. And the the passages that I want to read to you are more of a litany than one big chunk of scripture or poem. The first is from Ecclesiastes. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The patient in spirit are better than the proud in spirit. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. And in the day of adversity, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. And from the Message Bible, which is always fun to read, is Romans 8. All around us, we observe a pregnant creation. The difficult times of pain throughout the world are simply birth pangs. But it's not only around us, it's within us. The Spirit of God is arousing us from within. We're also feeling the birth pangs. These sterile and barren bodies of ours are yearning for full deliverance. That is why waiting does not diminish us any more than waiting diminishes a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting. We, of course, don't see what it is that is enlarging us, but the longer we wait, the larger we become, and the more joyful our expectancy. And lastly, from Proverbs, this is entitled The True Security. My child, do not let these escape from your sight. Keep sound wisdom and forethought, and they will be your life, the life for your soul, an adornment for your neck. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you sit down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. And then you will not be afraid of sudden panic or of the storm that strikes. For God will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. So I don't know about y'all, but the complexities of the world just seem to be getting more and more complex. I kept hearing echoes of Jeremiah this week. Peace, peace, where there is no peace. But I was also hearing echoes of two schools of thought that I know a little bit about, but not a lot, that actually predicted this kind of global sense of overwhelm. And I didn't know until yesterday that both of these theories were proposed in 1970, which I have a great, almost depressing message on 1969 as a pivotal year in humanity. And so it's no surprise that out of the chaos that was 1969 comes these theories of 1970. The first theory sounds almost like science fiction, and the second one is a well-grounded, well-proven theory of anthropology. So y'all know I'm a geek in clergy clothing, don't you? And I love to take science and see how it informs our spirituality. So I'm going to ask that you put your thinking caps on today, because I'm going to geek out on you. And I want to start with the first school of thought, the science fiction-y one, and that is one called singularity. And I know at least one person with Velcro memory in this crowd may remember 9 years ago I spoke here on singularity. But it has so clearly unfolded more rapidly and more accurately than even what had been proposed 9 years ago, much less over 50 years ago, that I hope you'll humor me, and I'm going to repeat a little bit of the background. Some of you weren't here, and I have to remind myself. Singularity is a scientific theory, and it's based on this rapid increase in knowledge and technology that we've been experiencing over the past decades. It's also a pop culture and science fiction topic as well. Have you seen the movie The Matrix? Mm-hmm. Yeah, singularity. AI, has anybody seen that? Artificial intelligence, that's a movie. So in some ways, singularity is incredibly complex, but in other ways, it's pretty simple. I continue to find it pertinent to the world in which we live and the ways that we can live well into the future. So let's kind of take an overview, looking at the explosion of human knowledge itself, which feeds into singularity. In 1973, a few years after these theories were developed, French economist, French, but he's from Brazil, and his name is Jorge Anderla, developed a model for measuring human knowledge. And if you imagine a straight line from the door to that classroom to right here, that's the timeline of human knowledge. Starting with the beginning of human language, that's the beginning. So Anderla proposed that beginning with the start of human language to today, it took 50,000 years to accumulate 1 unit of human knowledge. So that was up to the year 1 CE, which is half an inch from where I'm standing. Mm-hmm. That's 50,000 years, up to the year 1 for 1 unit of knowledge. It was a long time. So that by 1500 CE, that knowledge that took 50,000 years to accumulate doubled to 1,500 years. Then by 1750, another 250 years, that knowledge doubled. And then it was only 150 years that all that knowledge doubled. So you can get a sense of how it took less time for knowledge to double. The next doubling of knowledge only took 50 years. So we're up to 1950. Then it only took 10 years for knowledge to double. Then 7 years. The exponential acceleration of knowledge has not slowed down either. When I spoke on this topic 9 years ago, it was estimated that human knowledge doubled every 18 months. Y'all, it's down to 13 months. Mm-hmm. So you can see that human knowledge is speedily doubling. The theory of singularity proposes that this doubling of human knowledge will get to where it's constant, where it is a constant. That curve will have such a sharp incline that IBM estimates it will get to the point of doubling every 12 hours. When I was here talking about singularity last, it was every 3 days. So what you woke up to in the morning might not be true or might be totally different by the time you go to bed. And do you not feel that? Sometimes it's like my head is spinning. I don't know about y'all. Well, so early on there was a lot of debate in the geek world as to whether this really was accurate or not, whether this measuring of knowledge really happened. Some even mockingly called it the geek apocalypse, which I think sounds pretty cool. We're watching a movie called Finch, which was just released last year with, who played Wilson in the Isolated Castaway. He plays Tom Hanks. He's playing a man who's living the geek apocalypse, essentially. However, according to American futurist Ray Kurzweil, this curve of knowledge is going to be completely vertical within the next few years. He predicted it. So how you measure human knowledge is kind of beyond me. But all we have to do is look at the changes in our own culture to know that things are changing and changing rapidly. Here's just a few examples, my favorite of which, since I spent most of my career in medicine, is that medicine, 98% of what we know in medicine was discovered between 1950 and now. The English language has 5 times more words than when Shakespeare was alive. And look what he did with less. So. 1 week's worth of just the printed New York Times, 1 week, is more information than a person living in the 18th century had access to their entire life. 1 week. And that doesn't even include what New York Times puts online now. So in the past hour and a half, there have been more videos uploaded to YouTube than all the video that ABC, NBC, and CBS have ever broadcast since they first formed over 70 years ago. And newer to the scene, I don't even know that this was really a big deal 9 years ago. There are currently more than 1 million podcast channels, unique podcast channels, and over 65 million podcast episodes available online, half of which are probably in my playlist. I think that I'm going to listen to them all, but probably not. So of the nearly 25% of the U.S. population who listen to podcasts, a total of half of them are between the ages of 12 and 34, which is, I think, what does that speak to of what the future is for even like meeting for worship? That's another topic. There's one podcast channel, the Joe Rogan Experience, earned $30 million last year. And it's free. You don't have to do anything but log into your podcast channel. Podcast software. So in other words, things have changed a lot. And that's only the beginning. So if you're hanging with me now,
just by thread.
Right by thread, and it's a thin thread. There's another theory that was echoing in my mind, and I had to really research it because the only article I could find was on LinkedIn. It's not a published article, but I knew I had heard of it and didn't capture all of it. But it is a theory that was advanced by Margaret Mead, if you remember her, an anthropologist, again in 1970. And she described 3 different types of human cultures that explain how people share knowledge. Those 3 are post-figurative, figurative, and prefigurative. That's what I had to start with. Post-figurative, what was that? Margaret Mead, what was that? So I'm glad that we can research things. Post-figurative cultures is probably what we're all totally familiar with. I was going to say down with, so that really dates me. It's kind of what the past centuries have been, that knowledge is handed down from generation to generation. And it's interesting how this is linked to literacy. I can read, but you can't, so I have power, I have knowledge. And I can disperse to you, even as children who can't read, I am the authority. So we honor our histories, we honor traditions, we honor our elders, and we honor, in some cultures, venerate our ancestors. My example of that is I know how to make a perfect pound cake, or at least where to go to find out how to make a perfect pound cake. I go to a little box on a shelf and pull out an index card written by my Mamako, and there's the recipe for that pound cake. Or I can go look in the notebook that my mother created of all the family recipes. That's how I do it. That is post-figurative knowledge. Figurative cultures are present-oriented. That's where peers share knowledge. So you may remember what they call the youth culture. I call it the hippie culture of the 60s and 70s. That was where the youth shared knowledge. And then the yuppie culture, where the peers were the authorities, not anyone above you or below you in age. Mead believed that figurative cultures were temporary, and they kind of introduced a shift in how knowledge would be handled in that culture. I think that what came into my mind was back in 1989 was really the first peak of how technology would affect knowledge, when there were a handful of Chinese college students who attended a funeral on Tiananmen Square and turned it into a protest. And within weeks, there were 1 million protesters because they were able to live stream it on their phones. This was before YouTube or FaceTime or anything. I forget what the app was. It doesn't even exist anymore. But they were able to show the world what is going on in Tiananmen Square, in a country where you don't do that stuff. To have over 1 million people in a matter of weeks was amazing to me back then. So nowadays, though, we're in the throes of this shift into a culture that is called prefigurative, where young people are handing knowledge up to their parents and their grandparents, their elders. And it doesn't just apply to young adults, it applies to kids. Do you remember ever having to ask a young person about your cell phone?
Oh, yeah.
Or Tracy watches a 15-year-old guy repair John Deere lawnmowers, and watching the YouTube video while she's repairing our lawnmower. This 15-year-old kid has his own channel. I remember when it used to be the VCR. And now the young kids say, "What's a VCR?"
A beta.
What?
How about a beta?
A Betamax, yeah. So I've read countless stories recently of teens and even school-age kids that during COVID and before have created and launched multi-million-dollar companies out of a dream of theirs. And those old handwritten recipes, why keep up with all that stuff when I can just Google it? And I can see how well rated the recipe is. It's like 3 stars, I'm skipping that one. And it's really fascinating that, I think it's ABC, I'm not sure, a channel just started last week, a game show that really addresses this shift in knowledge called Generation Gap. Have you seen it? I haven't watched it yet. So, like, for the first time in human history, we're experiencing 2 major shifts in knowledge. The free and free-flowing tsunami of knowledge that technology is allowing, being compounded by the upheaval of how that knowledge is flowing. And the result is that the familiar hierarchy of power and information and control is disappearing. So not only was it Margaret Mead who anticipated the shift in knowledge, but futurist Alvin Toffler, anybody remember him? He
That's
coined a word in 1970,
Future Shock.
future shock.
I saw the movie. They showed it in when I was in high school
Yes.
years ago.
Right. That was his term to describe this feeling of overwhelm that is coming from rapid technological and cultural change. And I don't know about you, but that's the word I'm reclaiming to describe how I've been feeling lately. That overwhelm is certainly a future shock, but it's in our face in the present. So, okay, I'm saying to Spirit as I'm discerning the message for today is like, okay, now what? Because that's a lot of facts. And I thought, what does this have to do as the ground is shifting beneath our feet? I kind of think of coming down the roof and the gravel as my fingers can kind of grasp onto something. It's like, what's left if everything we know right now won't be true, or at least it'll be different when we wake up tomorrow? And what we've all learned in a lifetime of experience and wisdom is no longer valued or considered valid even. When my daughter asked about, when I interject how to raise children to my daughter, she's like, yeah, that's not what I've read online. Ouch. What is the basis of human existence in these postmodern times when the ground of truth is shifting on a daily basis? And the answer I got is the anchor as humans can be found in relationships, even if they're on Zoom. These are what I call interior and exterior relationships. Our connections to source, what I call source, and to ourselves, the capital S self, they're an inside job. They're interior relationships. Our connections to other humans and to all of creation is what I call exterior relationships. And all four of these relationships are as important now as any other time in the world, if not more so. Looking at them from the throes of a dramatic cultural shift, they kind of, to me, are like quantum relationships, because they're going to be what our future connections are built on and sustained by. The connection that brings many people together, whether it's in faith communities or AA or other groups of humans week after week that meet, is a deep and personal connection to a higher power, whether you call it reason or spirit or God or the I am, whatever you call it. The quality of that connection, it can be superficial. You can give a nod to the tradition or to the habit that you have, but it can be one of depth. And the same is true for the second type of relationship, the relationship with ourselves, the relationship within ourselves. I used to tell a joke in my classes at Guilford that the gods were sitting around the campfire one night trying to figure out where to hide wisdom, to make it hard to find. One said, oh, throw it over there on the rocks. Like, nah, they'll crack open the rock and there it'll be. And the other one said, oh, put it over there in that log in a tree. It's like, no, they'll burn the tree and out will pop wisdom. Too easy. And the God of gods, the one in the Hebrew scriptures, the God of the gods, said, I know where to put it. Put it within themselves. They'll never look there. So that connection to ourselves is just so vital. And y'all know much of what I talk to you about concerns those interior relationships. We've looked at ways to nurture them and nurture our connection with the inner teacher, the source of life, and how to nurture our own relationship with ourselves. Addressing one, to me, influences the other one. So it's kind of two for the price of one. And we can do it through mindfulness or centering, meditation, prayer, Lectio Divina, if you're familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
There are countless interior practices that will help us shore up our interior connections. Exercise, to me, counseling, eating well, resting well, those are ways we can kind of anchor our mind, body, and spirit internal connections. So next week, I want to look at the exterior aspects of relationships. But for now, I want you to consider the ways you tend your interior relationships. Do they anchor? Are they a strong anchor for you that will get you through these turbulent times? Do your practices serve you well? Does it really serve you to do what you're doing? Or maybe there's a new routine calling you that wants you to deepen your inner connections, like maybe yoga. It may not seem important, but doing what we can to shore up our relationships with ourselves and with what we consider to be our source, our higher power, will help now and into the future. It is these interior connections that take us out into the world. They're actually the foundation of our ways of being and doing out in the world. As you may have heard before, the old Swedish saying, and as I discovered, the Williams Brother Gospel Group in 1986 sang, if you sweep your own front door, if you take care of your interior relationships, the whole world would be clean. Ironically, another 1970s, which, what was it? But this was circling in my head, was the song that Cass Elliot, better known as Mama Cass, sang, and we can probably all hum it, is A New World Coming, and it was released in 1970. Now, I'll read or you can sing along, I'll read the verses to you. There's a new world coming, and it's just around the bend. There's a new world coming. This one's coming to an end. Boy, it's tough being in the birth pangs, though. Mm-hmm. There's a brand new morning rising clear and sweet and free. There's a new day dawning that belongs to you and me. There's a new voice calling. You can hear it if you try. And it is growing stronger with each day that passes by. Coming in peace, coming in joy, and coming in love. By cultivating our interior connections, we can participate in bringing peace and joy and love into this place called future shock. We can be and do the change we wish to be in the world, wish to see in the world. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.